In this tutorial, we'll go over how to select measures on the Air Handler ECM worksheet and the basics of reviewing the outputs on the Summary by Equipment and Summary by Measure worksheets. So at this point, we've defined the Air Handler baseline operational characteristics, and now we can define measures related to that air handler for a specific project. For the example building that we're working with, we defined Air Handler 403 in previous tutorials, and this is the worksheet where we will define the measures associated with this air handler. If you have other air handlers defined from the equipment worksheet, there will be another ECM worksheet for each air handler that you have. So like all other input worksheets, there's a question mark in the upper right hand corner. Clicking on this will give you more information on input fields related to this worksheet and take you to the help menu. Just take a look at what it shows here. So it talks about each of the ECMs that can be applied and the inputs. Okay, let's start with the scheduling ECM at the top. Let's say the building manager stated that the building is typically occupied from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, yet in our investigation we found that the equipment was actually operating 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. So there could be an opportunity for energy savings associated with this reduction in hours. So a previous defined schedule, we've defined Monday 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Tuesday to Friday 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Take a look at the scheduling tutorial for more information on how to define your schedules. And remember that if our building had Saturday and Sunday operation and these hours were considered off-peak, we would have to run the tool twice in order to account for those time periods. So in order to run the ECM, you need to check the box next to the ECM and click Calculate. So now the spinning circle instead of the arrow is indicating that the tool's running, and it'll take us to the Summary by Equipment tab when it's done here. So here we can see the energy usage by piece of equipment, and we only have one piece of equipment, AHU 403. So if you had multiple air handler units, you could compare the energy usage of each air handler unit on this worksheet. You can also see on this worksheet the electric usage per utility period, which we defined here in orange. The total energy usage, total electric, total demand, and the total gas savings in therms. Notice at the bottom that the savings percentage is shown as NA. This happens if you don't check the stacking box in the ECM worksheet, which we'll discuss later. Okay, let's take a look at the Summary by Measure. This worksheet shows the estimated energy savings on a per measure basis, and the peak demand shown here, savings, is the demand savings calculated at the highest outside air temperature on the demand shown on the demand worksheet, which is associated with the climate zone in which the building exists. This is we've found to be reasonably close to the DEER peak period demand savings, except for climate zone 1. So as an alternate method for estimating, an alternate method would have to be used for estimating DEER period peak demand savings for climate zone 1. And for our scheduling ECM, we don't have any peak demand savings. The demand dollar savings over here are summer demand and winter demand savings. However, is the peak demand savings on a per month basis, not that associated with the peak demand at the highest outside air temperature bin, or this cell here. And then it's multiplied by our demand cost for the summer month or the winter month and added up. So here we see our energy savings. We have our electric savings on a utility time of use period basis, and then our cost savings. And then also over here you can put in the implementation cost associated with the measure to calculate a simple payback. So let's assume our total cost is $4 grand for scheduling change. And the incentive our utility will give us is $750. We can see that our simple payback without incentive is 1.6 years, and with incentive it would be 1.3 years. Note that this simple payback calculation uses the total cost savings, which includes the electric, demand, and the gas savings here. So if utility incentives are only considered for one of these, you would need to do an independent calculation of your simple payback. Okay, now let's return to the Air Handler ECM worksheet and discuss some other measures. So let's add economizer control and change the outside air fraction from fixed, which was what we defined in our baseline, to varying between 20% and 100%. So our max is 100% and our minimum outside air fraction is 20%. Let's also add a supply air temperature reset, which will raise the supply air temperatures at cold outside air temperatures to save on reheat energy. And our inputs, it shows our baseline. The supply air temperature here is 55 degrees and the associated outside air temperature. So let's change this to 61 degrees at 35 degrees outside air, 57, 55, and 55. Just remain at that. The next ECM is duct static pressure. Our baseline was fixed at 1.25 set point. So here, if you use this ECM, we can achieve fan savings at periods of low load. So let's do a reset strategy. And our minimum will be 0.75, which is 1.25. It's our maximum. Flow rate at minimum set point is going to be 50%, and our flow rate at our maximum set point is going to be 100%. So our baseline air handler unit already included a VFD on our supply fan, which makes this next ECM supply fan VFD ineligible. So let's skip this and let's add a VFD on our return fan. And the efficiency for that will go 90%. Okay, so we have all the boxes checked next to the ECMs we want to apply. And let's click calculate and see what happens. Okay, and it brings us to the Summary by Equipment tab, but what I'm interested in is looking at the Summary by Measure tab. Let's click over to that, and you see all of our ECMs here. So if we highlight all of our electric savings, we can see our sum, our total electric savings is about 40,000 kilowatt hours. These savings are calculated from a common baseline, which might be the method used to compare measures if we had to choose between which one of these would provide us the most savings. But when reporting total energy savings potential for a package of measures, we would want to use a rolling baseline, which is called stacking in this tool. That's also why this is shown as NA, because we didn't stack these ECMs. So let's go back to the ECM tab and choose stacking. So for our air handler ECMs, measure stacking occurs in the order that they appear on this screen, and the order can't be changed. And by stacking, we mean that the scheduling measure is evaluated first, and then the proposed case of the scheduling measure is used as the baseline case for the economizer measure, and so on down the list. More information on the stacking order can be found in the help. So I'll show you where that is, and that's in the introduction section under stacking and ECM interactions. And so it shows you here the order of ECMs for both the air side ECMs and also your water side ECMs, and describes it in a little more detail. Note with stacking that interactions between air handlers and cooling plant measures are not accounted for by the tool, and so those would have to be accounted for manually. Okay, let's see what our savings looks like if we stack the measures. So we check the stacking box and we'll click calculate again. So stacking your measures helps minimize the double counting of savings and gives an overall picture of the total savings associated with the package of measures for reporting purposes. So one way, if you were calculating savings for air handler and cooling plant measures, and there were interactions, one way to account for that would be to decrease the cooling load as a result of the air handler measures on the chiller baseline tab, and that is discussed also in the chiller tutorials. Okay, so on our summary by measure tab, as you can see on this summary by equipment tab, we now have a savings, a total savings for the air handler 403 and also a percent savings. And the same thing, we have our total savings down here now on the summary by measure tab, and our total is 33,900. Okay, so this is about 16% less than the non-stacked savings, and let's take a look at our costs. So on the total line, let's enter that. Let's assume the total is 10 grand for all the measures, and our incentive is 2 grand. So now we can see the simple payback goes from 1.7 years to 1.3 years. So again, if you had multiple air handler units where you're proposing the same ECMs and the same baseline characteristics existed for those air handlers, you could go over to the equipment tab and copy this piece of equipment rather than having to input all of your characteristics again.